Hi, welcome back to another video on the channel. Now, the other day I did a video about the pros and cons of being in the Champions League. If you haven't watched that video, go and watch it now. The link is up here, or up here somewhere. So go and watch that. But let's just look at if Newcastle don't make the Champions League at the end of this season, the chances are we're probably going to fall into the Europa League. So let's get into it. 5 pros and 5 cons of getting into the Europa League for Newcastle United next season. So let's start with the pros. So the good things. At the end of the day, it's European football. You know, it's something we haven't enjoyed in a decade at Newcastle United since Alan Pardew was here, and we only had one season of it then. And Mike Ashley didn't really want us to be in that competition, so it wasn't even that amazing. Although we did have an all right run in it, but really you're looking at 20 years plus since we had a consistent spell in Europe. So it'd be nice to just get back into Europe, and that leads me to point number 2. There's going to be good nights at St James's Park, even in the Europa League. And there will be amazing away days for fans across Europe. And someone posted on Twitter the other day about some West Ham fans in the Europa Conference in Cyprus, and it was all the West Ham fans that had travelled over there. It doesn't really matter. Like, it's just fun going abroad and supporting your team. And my next pro is there's a chance we could actually do all right in that competition. If we got into the Champions League, I think it's fair to say no one would expect us to particularly get very far in it, although you never know, but the chances are it's unlikely to have a really good run. Whereas in the Europa League, with the squad we're building, yeah, there's a real good chance that we could have a decent run in there. I'm not saying we could win it next season, but you know, we'd have a really good chance of going deep in that competition, I think. Another good thing would be that we can start to attract like the next level of player in what would be a more progressive rebuild rather than jumping into the Champions League straight away. So qualifying for the Europa League would kind of be the logical next step, whereas the Champions League would maybe be 2 steps up. And like I said, we'd be able to attract a better calibre of player than even what we can attract now. Although obviously we've attracted some really good players, we're going to need more numbers in. So it would be good to get, you know, lots of players at a really decent level because you can offer them European football. The last pro, the 5th one, would be it's an extra revenue stream for the club. Okay, the money's not quite what it is in the Champions League, but you know, it does still help the case for better sponsorship deals, even if it's not as high as it would be if we were in the Champions League. So it is still a good thing for the club because it's showing that we would be building in the right direction. And like I say, it would be a slower build, but ultimately it's still the club heading in the right direction. And let's just look at a few of the cons of qualifying for the Europa League. The most obvious one, I think, is the Thursday and Sunday night schedule thing that you don't have in the Champions League. Champions League's good because you play Tuesday or Wednesday and you kind of alternate, and then you can still play on Saturday sometimes in the Premier League. That Thursday-Sunday schedule is tough, there's no doubt about it. Lots of teams struggle with it. And would the squad be able to cope with that, I guess, is the question. It would still require a lot of change and new players coming in to cope with the demands of balancing Europa League and the Premier League. So it's just something that we need to be aware of. The second con, if we qualified for the Europa League, would we have missed our golden opportunity to have qualified for the Champions League? And this is the big concern, really. If Liverpool and Chelsea sort of regroup next season and hit their levels that they usually hit, would we have to wait longer to then be able to qualify for the Champions League because the rebuild would end up being slower? It could set that rebuild back a little bit, and I think that's something to be aware of when we're talking about qualifying for the Europa League. So although there's some good things, there would be some bad elements that came with qualifying for the Europa League too. Again, although we'd be able to attract a better calibre of player, ultimately we wouldn't be able to attract the best of the best. We wouldn't be able to attract the elite players that you would if you're playing Champions League football. And really, as a football club, that's where we want to go to, that's where we want to be. And once you're in a position of strength, like you would be if you got into the Champions League, you can then build more easily. It's always a bit of a fight if you're in the Europa League trying to build your way up to being a Champions League club. And the other con is, although there's more money in the Europa League, it's a fraction of the Champions League money. So in terms of player development, squad development, there just wouldn't be quite as much money floating around. And again, financial fair play and the rules that have been put in place, almost specifically since we've had the takeover, would make our life trickier, again, slowing the rebuild down. So it would impact the club as a whole, and it's just something to be aware of, really. The Europa League would be nice in a lot of ways, but it would bring possible problems for the club going forward in a bigger way. Ultimately, though, if we did qualify for the Europa League, I'd be really, really happy. I think we've all got our eyes set on the Champions League, especially after winning 2 games last week, and then we go into this final run of games. We play Man United. If we can get a result against them, that really sets us up for the rest of the season and a real shot of getting the Champions League. But if we fall short of that and we finish in 5th or 6th and get Europa, I think we can be pretty satisfied with that, to be honest. It would be disappointing not to get the Champions League, but ultimately, European football next season, if someone had offered you that at the start of the season, I think you'd have absolutely taken it. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Hope this video's got you thinking a little bit. And like I say, if you haven't watched the Champions League pros and cons videos, please go and watch that. And let me know your comments over there too. And I'll see you really soon for another video.